Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Wednesday morning. Lovely to see you. Thank you, as always, for joining us for our Bible talk today. As we continue our adventure through the amazing, the wonderful, fabulous book of Psalms, I'm really loving them. I hope you are as well, as much as I do. And today we're in Psalm 50, which means we're exactly a third of the way through this grand and magnificent book. And today's Psalm 50, like I said, and as quite a few of the Psalms, I've got a bit of italic before it starts. It says here, a Psalm of Asaph. Now, the last few have been of the Korahites. Korahites were like the temple singers. And today's psalm is Asaph, who is a temple singer, which means he's probably some kind of a soloist. The next few psalms after today are psalms of David. So you've got the last few of the Korahites, which have been the choir, so to speak. Next few are of King David. Summaries in the middle, we have Psalm 50, which is of Asaph, who was some kind of soloist or something like that, so some great singer. So without further ado, into Psalm 50, here goes. The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes and does not keep silence. Before him is a devouring fire and a mighty tempest all around him. He calls to the heavens above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me, my faithful ones, who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. The heavens declare his righteousness, for God himself is judge. Hear my people, and I will speak. O Israel, I will testify against you. I am God, your God. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. I will not accept a bull from your house, or goats from your folds. For every wild animal of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the air, and all that moves in the field is mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world and all that in it is mine. Do I eat the flesh of bulls, or drink the blood of goats? Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and pay your vows to the Most High. Call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me. But to the wicked, God says, what right have you to recite my statutes, or take my covenant on your lips? For you hate discipline, and you cast my words behind you. You make friends with a thief when you see one, and you keep company with adulterers. You give your mouth free rein for evil, and your tongue frames deceit. You sit and speak against your kin. You slander your own mother's child. These things you have done, and I've been silent. You thought that I was one just like yourself, but now I rebuke you and lay the charge before you. Mark this then, you who forget God, or I will tear you apart. There will be no one to deliver. Those who bring thanksgiving as their sacrifice honour me. To those who go the right way, I'll show the salvation of God. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, lovely psalm. As they all are, they? It's in basically 5 bits. You have firstly the first 4 verses, which are basically, presumably Asaph saying, listen up, folks, God is about to speak. Then you have verses 5 to 6, where God, you might call it God's introductory remarks. Then you have God speaking to God's people. Then you have God, which is verses 7 to 15. Then in 16 to the end, you have God speaking to the wicked. And at the very end, the last couple of verses, 22, 23, you have like God giving the people the choice, go one way or the other. So the first 4 verses, you have the psalmist, which is Asaph here, summoning the people. He says, basically saying, listen up, folks, God is about to address you. Okay? Turn your ears on, turn up your hearing aids, get out your notebooks. God is about to speak. So effectively, that's the first 4 verses. Out of Zion, perfect, God shines forth. God is about to speak. So listen up, guys. Then in verses 5 and 6, God's introductory remarks, if you like. Gather to me, my faithful ones, who made a covenant with me. The heavens declare it, for God himself is just. So essentially, you've got God there speaking, God clearing his throat, you might say. God's introductory remarks, God saying, listen up, my people. Gather to me, my faithful ones, because I'm about to speak to you. Okay. Then you've got, God speaking to his people, and you've got God speaking to the wicked. And at the very end, like I said, you've got the choice. Now, I think when God speaks to his people and God speaks and God speaks to the wicked, there are sort of 3 things I want to bring out of this, really. He's talking here about people who worship. And effectively he's saying here, and I think when he's talking to God's people, I think that there's an issue here which kind of he addresses then, but I think it's equally relevant today. Often churches have things like charitable status and that sort of stuff, and churches often spend a lot of time doing fundraising and asking for money and everything else, and so on and so on and so on. We can get the impression sometimes that God needs our funds, and he talks here about sacrifices and this type of stuff. And God's response is quite interesting, really. You give me. Do you think do I eat the flesh of bulls? Do I drink the blood of goats? Do I need all this type of? I don't need it. At the end of the day, God is God, and God made heaven and earth, and God does not need our funds. God's quite capable of looking after himself. It's good to give to God, but we should just not ever think that God is somehow dependent on us. It's the other way around. We depend on God, and so it's not that God needs us, I mean, didn't Jesus say to the Jewish people at the time when he was around, do not think that because you're sons of Abraham, get away with it, because I can make even these stones, I can turn them into sons of Abraham, and so God can do that. God does not need us, If we turn the tap off, so to speak, God will still be God in the morning. Let's make no mistake about this. God is not some kind of a charity case, and in a sense, I think it's important to recognise that God is not some kind, as I keep saying, God is not some charity case. God does not feed on what we give him. God did not feed on the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats, and God does not need our funds today, so to speak. God is God, and I think it's important to get the right perspective on this. That when we give, we are giving, we're making sacrifices. When we are doing what we're doing, when we're serving God, God does not need it. Okay, it's just a good thing to do. Let's just remember just how big God is and what a privilege it is to serve him. So, thing to say is that God is not some charity case. God does not need us. It's us that needs God. Secondly, we should also not give to God in the hope of getting something back. It says here, offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving. So we shouldn't give to God in the hope that God will give us something back. At the end of the day, God gives and we give to say thank you. There's a lovely, I've said to you before, I'm sure, in St Matthew's in Walsall, there's a lovely poster on the wall, there's a banner on the wall that says, you cannot outgive God, God gives to us and we respond to God, we respond to God's goodness. And God loved us, as I would say before, we were a twinkle in our mother's eye. God loved us first, and we'll never be able to pay God back. And so we shouldn't give to God. We shouldn't serve God in the hope that God will do something in return. God gave to us first, and therefore we give in response to his love and his. So offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving. So it's not beseeching, it's actually thanking God. And we serve God in response to what he has done for us. And then the third thing, of course, about we addresses the wicked is about making sure, really, that when we serve God, we call ourselves Christians, when we take the words of Jesus on our lips, when we try and, we are God's people, to make sure that our behaviour matches it, to make sure that we don't, as it says here, give our mouths free rein for evil. And make sure our tongues don't frame deceit, that we're not slandering our own mothers, and all this type of thing. To make sure that we're not saying one thing with our lips on a Sunday and then doing something different during the week. It's about making sure that our lives are matching our words, that we are living out what we say with our lips on a Sunday, and so on. So that's what God says, really, in these. He says to God's people, he says, I don't need you, serve me, but in a sense we serve God because it's a good thing to do. God is not dependent on us; it's us that depends on God. Secondly, to say that we shouldn't give in the hope of getting something back. We always give and serve in response to what God's given for us. And thirdly, if we're going to serve God, to make sure that what we say or what we do with our lives during the week matches what we say at the weekend. And then finally, at the end, the last couple of verses, mark this then, you that forget God, and he gives them a choice here, don't forget God, put God first, offer him, those who bring us thanksgiving as their sacrifice, honour me, and those I'll show the salvation of God. So he leaves us with a kind of choice, there are those who forget God, and there are those who put God first, and that's kind of the way it should be. So here we have this fabulous psalm, because they're all great, aren't they? First, you've got the psalmist speaking. Listen up, God's about to speak. Then God says, gather my people, I'm going to talk to them. Then he talks to his people, and he essentially says, I am God. I do not need your sacrifices. I mean, do it, but I don't need it. It is you that needs me, so to speak. I don't need you. And we need to remember that God does not need what we do, but it's good to do, but God doesn't need, it's us that needs God. Secondly, to make sure that we're not giving to try and get something back, but we're giving in response to what God has done for us. We're offering God a sacrifice of thanksgiving. And thirdly, in response to what he says to the wicked, it's about making sure that our lives and our words match up, that we're not saying one thing on Sunday and doing something else during the week. And then finally, listening to this choice. We have a choice. We go one way or the other. And let's make sure that we're putting God first, that we're offering God a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and that let's ask him and pray today that he would help us to go the right way. That way, we too will know the salvation of God. God bless you. Enjoy your Wednesday. Have a lovely day. And thank you as always. And don't forget, by the way, to share these messages so other people